I want you to notice that he says sins in the plural. One, because he is a sinner and he's sinned more than one time. But it's important for us to understand why he would address it this way. There was confusion then, there's confusion even today about this idea. And so Jesus was being very clear in this moment that the root of this man's issue, the root of this man's problem, is not a particular sin. So in other words, he didn't commit some egregious sin and then therefore his legs wouldn't work, or his parents didn't commit some sort of egregious sin and therefore they had a child who had a disability. But he is saying, hear this, he is saying that his sins or his sin nature have a direct effect upon his life. And so it's very true that while a particular sin by him or his parents or grandparents didn't cause him to have this palsy or this paralyzed part of his body, it is true that he's paralyzed because of sin in the world, because that is what has caused all of the pain, suffering, and dying and death that's ever been in the world anywhere or everywhere is the sin of the world. And so Jesus addresses first the root issue of the man's suffering and struggling because he addresses his sin. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Nashville at the Southern Baptist Convention, and I didn't want to drive down to the place where we were going because, well, I just don't like to drive in those places. That's why. And so we took a Lyft. It's the first time we'd ever done that because we're hillbillies, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. So we took a Lyft, and so the first lady sang to us halfway there. That was weird. But then I think the next guy that we got, the first thing they ask you is, well, where are you going, right? What are you doing here? They could probably see that we didn't look normal, right? And so they said, well, what do you, Jackie looks normal. I just want to put that out there. Okay, and so he said, well, where are you going and what are you doing? And so I said, well, I'm a pastor of a small Southern Baptist church in Kansas, and we're going to the Southern Baptist Convention for this meeting. And I wish I could just tell you how many times I've had this conversation. But the guy says, oh, you know it's going to be good then, right? Oh, you're a pastor. I've got a question for you. And I could have honestly, like before he said it, I had the whole question. I knew exactly what he was going to say, and here's what he said. Why do bad things happen to good people? And I stole an answer from another pastor, and I said, they don't. There's no such thing as good people. We're sinners. And if I got what I deserve today, buddy, my life would be horrendous. And so anything that I have is by the goodness and the grace of God. And you see, he may not have had this problem because of a particular sin, but he had this problem because of the sin of the world. And when we look at those around us who are struggling and suffering, we need to remember that at the heart of that problem is sin. And so Jesus, by his grace, I want you to understand this. This sounds like when Jesus doesn't address initially his problem and when he doesn't initially address his paralyzed state, it sounds like Jesus is being unloving. But I want you to notice this. Jesus addressed the greatest need that this man would ever have. Jesus showed him more mercy and more grace in those few words than he ever would have when healing his legs. Jesus addressed the eternal issue that was happening in this man. You see, the problem is that if Jesus only would have healed his legs, he would have had legs that would have walked for the next 20, 30, 40 years, and then he would have spent an eternity in damnation. But because Jesus was willing to forgive his sins, even if he didn't heal his legs, he would have had 20, 30, or 40 years of paralyzed state, and he would have had an eternity of jumping for joy in heaven.